questionable selection in the first round, taking the Alabama offensive lineman. But they come back in round 2, and I know they take a player that Pete Prisco really liked, the safety from TCU, Trevon Moehrig. I hope I'm pronouncing that one right. I'm not going to get critiqued by the guys in the quarterback room. But Brady, Pete, what do you think about this one?
I heard they liked him in round 1 at one point. There were guys around the league that thought they might take him in the first round. So if you can come back, I didn't like their first round pick. I did not like Alex Leatherwood going in the first round. I think he was a second-round player. But you come back and you get a guy who actually probably was, I still think he's the best safety in this class. You get him in the second round, you kind of make up for it. And you look at their safety situation, it's a disaster. I mean, Jonathan Abram, he can't cover anybody.
He's basically he's a glorified linebacker.
He's not very good. And they brought Carl Joseph back. He's not very good. Jeff Heath, I think I could get open against Jeff Heath. So, I mean, they're not very good in the back end. It makes all the sense in the world. This is a good pick. The Raiders have blown a bunch of picks in the last 3 or 4 years. This is a good pick.
This is a pick that's gonna pan out for them. It's gonna work. He's that sort of player. I think plug and play right away. He was asked to do a variety of things in Gary Patterson's scheme there at TCU. One thing I can assure you, and I know this is something that's kind of a lost art nowadays, tackling, okay? He's a great open field tackler. He's played the deep middle of the field. He's rangy in that regard. He's good in coverage if it's man-to-man or that match zone coverage. And also he's got good ball skills. He's going to get his hands on the football. So he really possesses all of that. He was my favorite safety in this draft. I know Holland went before him. And then depending on how you view Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah because of his size.
Grant, too.
And Richie Grant. This was the player that I thought would go first off the board as a safety. Not necessarily surprised that it's in the second round only because there's not a premium put on that position. But this is a step in the right direction. Look, John Gruden and Mike Mayock need this to pay off. They really do. If we're being honest about all this, I don't know how much more patience Mark Davis has with all of it, but it's a young football team. They've had a lot of draft picks. They've got to start having some of these guys be hits because there's too many guys that they've either signed or traded for via free agency that haven't worked out. Some of the draft picks, Cleveland Farrell, we're still waiting for him to emerge as an edge rusher. And so I think there's going to be a little bit of fatigue if some of this stuff doesn't start panning out for the Raiders.
And it might cost Mayock his job. It's not going to cost Gruden his job because he's in for such a big price tag.
Well, at some point, though, that seat's going to get hot. And you're right. It might be Mayock first. But the reality is, at some point, the pressure's got to be on John Gruden because he's ultimately the one who's making this decision.
From knowing people that have been around that team and inside that organization, Gruden makes the calls on the draft day.
Yes.
And I'll give you an example. The scouts and the personnel people wanted Devin White, and they made the call to get Cleveland Farrell. And Devin White would be a nice fit in that Raiders defense. I mean, they blew it.
They could have taken Josh Allen.
Yeah.
And instead, Josh Allen goes on to have double-digit sacks that year, and Cleveland Farrell, I don't even know if he's amounted to that yet.
No, he hasn't.
Run on defensive backs as the Cowboys with the 44th selection take cornerback from Kentucky, Kelvin Joseph. So we'll stay with you guys, Brady and Pete. And what do you think about this selection? We know Dallas went defense with Micah Parsons in the first round, adding to the defensive side of the ball in the second round.
Well, you knew they wanted to get corner because they had their eyes on Patrick Surtain and J.C. Horn, and they didn't get them. And when they didn't get them, you knew they were going to come back in the second round. And Kelvin Joseph's interesting. And I watched a lot of Kentucky tape because you guys know I'm infatuated with Jamin Davis. He's very good. He's long. He's athletic. He's a good cover player. I think this is a good pick for the Cowboys, particularly because it fills a major need. You have to get cover people, and they lack those guys in the back end, Brady.
Remember, it's Dan Quinn now as the defensive coordinator. So this fits exactly the skill set he has of what he wants to run with some of that cover three scheme, locking them up on islands, either match zone or time to time, man to man. Now, I don't know how much Dan Quinn will potentially change what he's done since his time at Seattle and as head coach for the Falcons, because obviously, as we know, once he was dismissed, Raheem Morris changed some things up. They started getting a little bit better results. So maybe Dan Quinn's going to look to do that. But his base set, it's a lot of post-high safety, and it's a lot of seeing Kelvin Joseph be put in positions to make plays like you're watching. So I love it. He's your prototypical size you're looking for at that cornerback position, and it's a need for Dallas.
Well, there's the old theory that the standard cover three has been figured out that they played. And do you buy that?
I mean, look, there's variations of how you can play it. I think it depends.
The old Seattle ways have been figured out?
Everyone's understood how to basically attack the seam. It's usually the second or third man through, meaning if you've got a two wide receiver set, okay, you're going to release that running back. You could release a tight end if it's in a 3-by-1 or someone coming from across the field to then attack up that seam where there's a huge void. Now, the reason why that started to work and the reason why it was effective when you had time.
Right.
It takes time to
right.
get that third guy up to that poor portion of the field to get up to the seam from wherever he's coming from. When Seattle was best, they had a pass rush where you didn't have that time. So as that pass rush started to diminish a little bit, I think you saw in Seattle. You obviously saw that was an issue at Atlanta, and that's why it didn't work out. So, it still works. It was just really predicated on, do we have a pass rush? Can we rush with 4 and get there? Because if you can, that third guy up, third guy through the seam, he's never going to get there.
Right.